In this lesson, we'll be discussing alerting and monitoring activities. Now, alerting and monitoring activities play a big role in maintaining system health by ensuring optimal performance and protecting against many potential threats. Alerting and monitoring utilizes a wide range of activities, including log aggregation, alerting, scanning, reporting, archiving, alert response and remediation, or validation. Now, first, we have log aggregation. Log aggregation is the process of collecting and consolidating log data from various sources into a centralized location. The log aggregation process is going to help with the analysis and troubleshooting of system issues, security incidents, and performance problems. This can be used for multiple purposes, including troubleshooting, performance monitoring, security analysis, and compliance. Now, since aggregated logs can provide a holistic view of what's happening across various systems and applications, they can make it much easier for us to identify and troubleshoot issues by helping us to correlate events across different systems or network logs to pinpoint the root cause of a given problem or incident. Consolidated log data can also provide us with valuable insights into our system's performance. By aggregating logs, you can monitor performance trends over time, identify your bottlenecks, and make informed decisions about your resource allocations. Logs are also useful in terms of conducting a security analysis because our logs often combine data about security events like failed login attempts, changes to user privileges, and suspicious network connections. By aggregating and analyzing all of this log data, you can detect security incidents, investigate breaches, and gather evidence for forensic analysis. Another use for log aggregation is to meet your organization's compliance requirements. Now, many laws and regulations like GDPR and HIPAA require your business to maintain a comprehensive set of logs for certain regulated activities. Now, log aggregation can help businesses meet these requirements by ensuring that all of your necessary log data is being collected and stored in a centralized location that can be easily reviewed by auditors during a compliance audit. Second, we have alerting. Now, alerting involves setting up notifications to inform relevant stakeholders when specific events or conditions occur. Alerting can be triggered based on predefined thresholds or anomalies that can be delivered via various channels like email, text messages, and push notifications. Alerting is also important in helping to ensure that issue resolution, incident detection, and compliance is occurring within your organization. By using alerts, your team can proactively address issues before they escalate into more significant problems. For example, if a server's CPU utilization exceeds a certain threshold, an alert might be triggered that allows your team to investigate it and then resolve that issue before it impacts your system's overall performance or availability. Alerts can also be set up to notify security teams of potential security incidents. For example, multiple failed login attempts or unusual data access patterns could trigger alerts, which can then enable a faster investigation and response to occur. Also, some laws and regulations do require the immediate notification of specific events, like a data breach, to governmental agencies. If you implement alerting mechanisms, you can be assured that you're meeting those requirements in order to maintain your regulatory compliance. Third, we have scanning. Now, scanning involves regularly examining your systems, networks, or applications to identify vulnerabilities, configuration issues, or other potential problems. The scanning process is crucial for maintaining system health to ensure that your systems are operating within optimal performance standards and are safeguarded against potential threats. Now, scanning typically involves the use of a specialized tool or service like Nessus, OpenVAS, or Qualys to perform various types of scans, including vulnerability scans, configuration scans, and code scans. A vulnerability scan checks for known vulnerabilities in your systems, networks, or applications by comparing your system's current state against a database of known vulnerabilities that's known as the CVE, or Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures, and this is a database provided by the MITRE Corporation that you can find at cve.mit.org. For example, a security team might use a vulnerability scanning tool like Nessus or OpenVAS to perform a vulnerability scan of their entire network. These scans will identify any unpatched software, misconfigured services, or other potential vulnerabilities that could be exploited by a threat actor so that your system administrators can then mitigate these vulnerabilities by patching those systems, reconfiguring them, or putting in place some other forms of mitigations like installing a web application firewall if that's appropriate. Now, a configuration scan, on the other hand, is going to be used to check for misconfigurations that could impact your system performance or security by comparing the system's configuration against best practice guidelines or specific compliance standards. A configuration scan will focus on detecting misconfigurations that have the potential to affect system performance or security. By conducting a configuration scan, organizations can proactively identify and rectify any deviations from their recommended settings while ensuring that their systems not only operate efficiently, but they also adhere to security and compliance standards. This preventative measure will definitely help to maintain a robust and secure IT environment, and it helps to minimize the risk of vulnerabilities and performance issues that stem from configuration errors. For example, if an organization is striving to maintain a secure and compliant network environment, they might choose to employ a configuration scanning tool like CISCAT to conduct periodic scans of their systems and network devices. These types of scans will evaluate your system configurations against recognized benchmarks like the Center for Internet Security's CIS controls or other industry-specific compliance frameworks like PCI DSS that's used with credit card processing. Any discrepancy discovered during the scan, such as an open port, weak access controls, or non-compliant settings, are then going to be flagged for attention and remediation. Then, your system administrators can take their proactive steps to rectify all these misconfigurations and to ensure the network remains aligned with the industry best practices and regulatory requirements in order to bolster your security posture and compliance status. A code scan will check the source code of an application for potential issues, such as security vulnerabilities or coding errors. This is often done as part of a software development process to catch and fix issues early. Code scans can be completed using either static code analysis or dynamic code analysis techniques as well. For example, if you're working as part of a software development team that's creating a new web application, you might want to perform a code scan to ensure the application's security and functionality is working as you designed. Now, you and your team can employ static code analysis tools like Fortify or SonarQube to examine the application's source code thoroughly on your behalf. If the tool identifies a potential security vulnerability during its scan, such as an SQL injection point, cross-site scripting vulnerabilities, or coding errors like unsanitized or uninitialized variables or resource leaks, these issues can quickly be addressed during your development process to reduce the likelihood of a future security breach. This helps to prevent future issues while also ensuring a more robust and reliable application is going to be deployed into your production environment. Additionally, dynamic code analysis techniques, such as penetration testing, can complement your static analysis by evaluating the application's behavior while it's running to uncover any vulnerabilities that may not be apparent when you're conducting a purely static review of the source code. Fourth, we have reporting. Now, reporting involves generating summaries or detailed reports based on the collected and analyzed data. These reports can provide insight into system performance, security incidents, compliance status, and other aspects. For example, a compliance officer might use a tool like Splunk or Sumo Logic to generate reports to help demonstrate the organization's compliance with data protection regulations. These reports can be used to satisfy regulatory requirements and to identify areas for continuous improvement as well. Fifth, we have archiving. Archiving involves storing data for long retention periods or for future reference, including all of your organization's log data, performance data, incident data, and other types of important data that you may have collected over time. For example, a cybersecurity professional could use a tool like Amazon's S3 or Google Cloud Storage to archive its older log data. This archived data can be used for further analysis, troubleshooting, auditing, or compliance purposes if it's needed. Depending on various laws and regulations, you may or may not be required to maintain an archive of all of your data for a certain period of time. HIPAA, or the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, is going to require you to maintain all of your data for 6 years to prove compliance. So, if you're working in a healthcare-related field, you may want to move your data into either hot or cold storage inside of a cloud environment, so that way you'll be able to meet this regulatory requirement, or you'll be responsible for maintaining all of that in your on-premise data center as well. Sixth, we have alert response and remediation or validation. Now, once an alert or scan identifies a potential vulnerability or incident, we have to begin the process of managing and resolving those identified issues as part of our overall alerting and monitoring activities. This involves taking appropriate actions in response to alerts and ensuring that the identified issues have been effectively addressed. Now, the first step in the response and remediation or validation process involves taking appropriate actions in response to a received alert. This response can include investigating the issue, escalating it to the appropriate team, or initiating a predefined response procedure. For example, if a network engineer receives an alert about a network outage and they respond by investigating the issue and identifying the cause of the outage, they have completed this step of the process. Then, we need to begin the remediation or validation process, which helps to determine the specific response based on the nature of the alert and the organization's incident response procedures. When we talk about remediation, we're really talking about the steps used to resolve the identified issues or vulnerabilities, which could include things like patching outdated software, reconfiguring services, or modifying an application's source code. Now, validation, on the other hand, involves verifying that the remediation you implemented was actually successful and has effectively addressed the given vulnerability or issue. So, for example, if an alert notified a security analyst that a missing software patch was not installed, and this represents a known vulnerability on a Windows domain controller, this is considered an alert. Now, the security analyst might respond to this alert by installing a security update to patch this known vulnerability. This is the remediation portion of this process. Now, the security analyst also needs to run a vulnerability scan on that domain controller again to validate that the patch was successfully installed and that the threat that vulnerability represents has been fully eliminated from this server. Now, when your security analysts respond to a given alert, you may also find that they're going to use two other actions, known as quarantining or alert tuning. Now, a common remediation step might involve quarantining a system or file that's suspected to be malicious. Quarantining involves isolating a system, network, or application to prevent the spread of a threat and limit its potential impact. For example, if a workstation is suspected to be infected with malware, the security team might quarantine this workstation by logically isolating it from the rest of the network, while the security team investigates the issue further and then undertakes the rest of the organization's incident response procedures on this suspected malicious workstation. This prevents the malware from spreading to other systems while the team is working to remove that infection, which is why we quarantine it. Now, alert tuning, on the other hand, is a form of remediation where we're going to adjust the alert parameters to reduce errors, false positives, and to improve the overall relevance of the alerts being generated by a given system. Alert tuning can also involve changing the thresholds that trigger an alert, adjusting the conditions that define an alert, or modifying the alert delivery methods. For example, a system administrator might be receiving too many alerts about a minor CPU utilization spike that really doesn't impact your system's overall performance. So, to reduce the excessive noise being created by all these alerts, the system administrator could retune that alert to only trigger when the system's CPU utilization exceeds a higher threshold or remains high for at least 30 or 60 seconds or longer to reduce the amount of alerts being generated by this system. So remember, log aggregation is used to collect and consolidate log data from various sources into a centralized location. Alerting is going to be used to set up notifications to inform relevant stakeholders when specific events or conditions are occurring. Scanning involves conducting regular examinations of your systems, networks, or applications to identify vulnerabilities, configuration issues, or other potential problems. Reporting is going to be used to generate summaries or detailed reports based on the collected and analyzed data. Archiving is used to store data for long-term retention periods and for future reference. Alert response involves taking the appropriate actions in response to received alerts. Remediation and validation is going to be used to take the steps necessary to resolve identified issues or vulnerabilities and verify that your remediation efforts were actually successful. Now, it's important to always conduct proper alerting and monitoring activities in order to maintain your system's overall health and to ensure its optimal performance while still safeguarding your organization against potential threats, so keep this in mind.